was traveling for work, nothing special. A sales trip to a small mountain town in Colorado. Everything nearby was booked solid for a music festival, except for one last-minute Airbnb, a vintage hotel room, room 406. In a refurbished 1920s building, the host's bio was oddly formal. Just the name, Mrs. Elkins. No picture, no reviews. But the photos looked clean, old-fashioned, but clean. A clawfoot tub, floral wallpaper, brass fixtures. I figured I'd be in and out. One night. No big deal. I booked it and got an auto message. Within seconds, check-in code 9914, room 406. Do not speak to the night staff. It felt like a joke. I arrived just after dusk. The building looked almost like an abandoned theater, big, arched windows, old stone, ivy curling up the side. But room 406 was just as pictured, right down to the porcelain doorknob. Still, something felt ... off. There were no other guests on the 4th floor. Every door I passed was open and empty, but totally silent. When I finally stepped into room 406, it smelled faintly of old lavender and something else, underneath, like iron. The room itself was oddly perfect, everything spotless, not a speck of dust, but nothing felt lived in. No personal touches, even the bed looked like it had never been touched, crisp, tucked so tightly it could have been made by a machine. I set down my bag and tried the TV. Nothing, just static. The remote didn't work. No channels. No welcome note. No Wi-Fi password. At 11:42 p.m. I was brushing my teeth when I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. 3 soft, deliberate taps on the door. I froze. I hadn't ordered anything. I hadn't told anyone I was here. I stepped slowly to the door and checked. The empty hallway. Then, as I leaned back, I heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. This time from the bathroom door inside the room. I stared at it. It was closed when I arrived. I hadn't opened it yet. Heart pounding. I moved closer and gripped the brass handle. I turned it slowly. The door creaked open into darkness. The light inside didn't work. The clawfoot tub was there, just like in the photos. But it was filled, halfway, with dark, still water. And at the bottom, I could swear I saw someone's hand. I froze at the doorway, staring at the tub. The water was murky, too dark to be just old plumbing. It looked almost thick, like ink. And there, beneath the surface, unmoving, was what looked like a hand, pale, slightly curled, as if it had been resting there a long time. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then, ripples. The water shifted just slightly, like something had stirred beneath it. But I hadn't moved. There was no breeze, no draft. The window was sealed shut with paint around the edges. I backed away, slowly. I told myself I was imagining it, that it could have been a trick of the light, maybe shadows from the hall. But the second I stepped away from the bathroom, I heard it, a single splash. I didn't go back in. I locked the bathroom door and pushed a chair in front of it, like I was 5 years old again. And that night, as I tried to sleep, I kept hearing something wet moving on the tile floor behind that door, dragging, and breathing. I didn't sleep. Not really. By 4 a.m., the noises from the bathroom had stopped, but the silence was worse, heavy, like the room was listening. I sat on the edge of the bed with the TV on static, just for the sound. My phone had no signal, number, Wi-Fi, no messages. At 4:17 a.m., the lights flickered once. Then the room went black. No storm, no wind, just darkness. I used my phone's flashlight and aimed it at the door to the bathroom, still closed. Still with the chair wedged under the handle. Then I noticed something on the ceiling above the bed. A black dot, a tiny circle of glass, a camera. I stood on the bed and looked closer. It was old, built into the molding. the kind used in those antique security systems. But it was active. A faint red light blinked once. I backed down slowly, heart racing. Then, across the room, the bathroom door creaked just an inch. I held my breath, and then my phone screen lit up without warning. Camera app open and flashed. One photo taken, but I hadn't touched it. The photo loaded in there, in the frame, was a wet handprint on the inside of the bathroom mirror. As soon as daylight broke, I left the room, didn't shower, didn't even change. I just grabbed my keys and bolted down the stairwell. Skipping steps at the lobby desk sat an older woman with silver hair pinned tightly in a bun, wearing a navy cardigan. She didn't look up as I approached, just stared at something behind the counter. I cleared my throat. "Hi, I stayed in room 406 last night, I think. Something's wrong with the bathroom." She didn't react. Then she spoke without raising her head. "There is no room 406. I blinked. "Excuse me." She slowly lifted her gaze. Her eyes were an unnatural shade of gray, cold, flat. "You must have the wrong building." I turned to point back up the stairs, but the door was locked with a metal bar. A faded sign read, "Floors 4 and up under renovation. Do not enter." She stood. "Guests are not permitted above floor 3. You should leave now." I was frozen. I didn't know what to say then. Softly, she added, "And next time, do not speak to the night staff." Back in my car, I tried to calm down. I told myself maybe I got the wrong room. Maybe I imagined it. Sleep deprivation, stress, whatever. But then I remembered the photo. I opened my camera roll. The picture was still there, taken at 4:17 a.m. A shot of the bathroom mirror, blurred slightly, and that unmistakable wet handprint in the glass. I zoomed in. The handprint was upside down, like someone had left it while standing on the ceiling. My chest tightened. I posted the photo in a local Reddit thread about haunted places. I didn't mention names or the Airbnb, just asked, "Anyone know this room?" One user replied within minutes. They said, "That looks like the old Clifton Hotel. Room 406 was sealed after the 1989 drowning." The woman wouldn't stop screaming about hands in the mirror. My stomach dropped. I searched online. No mention of any drowning. No archived article. But one blog post popped up, a paranormal investigator's site from 2013. It listed room 406 as a psychic hotspot and mentioned the name Mrs. Elkins. The author claimed she'd spoken to a woman by that name in the lobby. She wrote, "Her hands were bone white and ice cold." I should have left town. I knew that, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was unfinished. That by staying in that room even for one night, Tide opened something, and it hadn't closed. So I went back, not at night, broad daylight. Noon. The front desk was empty this time. No Mrs. Elkins. No staff at all. I climbed the stairs, phone in hand, filming everything. When I reached the 3rd floor, the metal bar blocking the stairwell to the 4th was still there. But the screws were old and rusted. I lifted it slowly and slipped under. Upstairs. The hall looked exactly the same, just as I remembered. Dusty, silent. Every door open, except one, room 406. I stood in front of it again. No key, no code, just the porcelain knob. I turned it. It opened. Easily. Everything was back as it was. The bed, the old wallpaper, the faint lavender smell, even the water-stained floorboards by the bathroom door. But this time, there was something new. A suitcase, an old weathered leather case, sitting at the foot of the bed. I reached for it, hesitating, then slowly unlatched the buckles. Inside were women's clothes, 1970s style. A faded ID card. Name, Margaret Tillman. Date of birth, 1952, and tucked beside it, a damp, wrinkled envelope. On the front, written in shaky cursive, "Don't look in the mirror." I stared at the envelope for a long time. Its paper was water damaged and smelled faintly metallic like rust or old blood. Whatever had stained it came from inside the suitcase. But the writing was still readable. Don't look in the mirror. I stood up slowly and turned toward the bathroom. The door stood wide open now. No chair blocking it. No creak. Just open and waiting. I stepped closer. The tub was empty this time. Dry, but stained around the drain, as if something had sat in water too long and left behind the shape of itself. But the mirror was wrong. It wasn't the same mirror I remembered. This one was tall, old, maybe original to the building. Its glass looked warped, like it had been exposed to heat or age. And behind the glass, I could see my reflection, but it wasn't following me. I tilted my head left. My reflection stayed still. I leaned in closer. It smiled. I didn't. I stumbled backward, hitting the sink Don, just for a moment, before I turned and ran. I saw my reflection step forward while I remained still. There were wet handprints rising up behind it, and something else inside the mirror was breathing. I didn't remember leaving the room. 1 second I was staring into the mirror. The next I was in the hallway, panting, hands shaking, staring at the closed door of room 406. I rushed down the stairs, 2 at a time, and burst into the lobby. She was there again. Mrs. Elkins, sitting behind the desk like she'd never moved. This time, she was staring straight at me. "You looked," she said. Her voice was quiet, not angry, not surprised, just tired. "What is this place? What's in that room?" She tilted her head. "You let it see you. That's all it needs." I took a step back. "Who are you?" She smiled faintly. "I told you not to speak to the night staff." Behind me, I heard the lobby door creak open. Slowly, someone stepped inside, bare feet on tile. Wet dripping sounds followed them. I turned my head slowly, terrified. A figure was there, barely human, pale, bloated eyes, completely black, drenched, skin like wax. It moved without blinking. Mrs. Elkins spoke again. "You let it out." I ran out the door, into the daylight, blinding and sharp, like it was trying to burn the memory off me. But it didn't. I drove 4 hours without stopping. Didn't check out, didn't go back for my bag. I just kept driving. But deep down, I knew I hadn't left it behind. That night, I stayed in a highway motel, 2 towns over. Nothing fancy, just beige walls, humming AC, and a light that flickered a little too often. I locked the door, drew the curtains, and told myself it was over. At 2:46 a.m., my phone lit up on its own camera app. One flash, photo taken. I didn't move. I checked the gallery. The photo was blurry, but it was clearly the bathroom mirror from this new motel room, and there was a handprint. Again, only this time, it wasn't on the mirror. It was on the ceiling above my bed. The next morning, I tried to ignore it. Told myself it was some glitch or prank app. But the feeling of being watched grew worse every minute. I couldn't stay. I packed everything and went to the local library to look deeper into the hotel's history. There, I found an old newspaper clipping tucked inside a dusty archive book. Tragic death in room 406. Woman found dead in bathroom. 1989, the article said. Margaret Tillman, a hotel maid, was found drowned in the clawfoot tub of room 406. No explanation. No suspects. Just a note found by her side. "Don't look in the mirror." I shuddered. Someone else had tried to warn me. That evening, as I sat in my new Airbnb, I received a message from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have come back." Panic gripped me. I wanted to delete the message, but my fingers froze. Suddenly, my phone screen went black. Then, the camera app opened again, this time, recording. I watched helplessly as the video showed my own room. Slowly, a shadow rose from the floor. A wet hand reached up from under the bed, dragging itself forward. I slammed the phone shut, heart pounding. I grabbed my keys and ran to my car. never looking back as I drove away. I glanced in the rearview mirror and saw a pale figure standing in the hotel doorway, waving, "Mrs. Elkins." The hotel behind her began to fade, flickering like an old film reel. I never stayed in an Airbnb again. Sometimes, when the night is very still, I still hear the sound of water dripping and faint knocking on my door, and I know room 406 never really let me go. I booked an Airbnb cabin deep in the woods for a weekend escape. The listing was simpler, rustic cabins surrounded by pine trees, far away from the noise of the city. The host was friendly but brief in her messages. She told me the cabin was peaceful and that I'd find everything I needed. When I arrived late on a Friday, the sun was just setting behind the trees. The cabin looked exactly like the pictures, a small wooden structure with a porch, smoke curling from the chimney. The door was unlocked, just as the host said. Inside, the smell of cedar and pine filled the air. It was quiet, too quiet. Sounds of animals, no wind rustling through leaves. The only thing out of place was a locked door in the hallway. It had no handle, just an old brass bolt across the top. I asked the host about it, but she said it was a storage room that was off limits. I didn't think much of it at first, but that night, I heard noises coming from behind that door. Soft thuds, scratching sounds, and something like whispering. I told myself it was just my imagination. But the next morning, the bolt was loose, and a note was slipped under the door. It said only one word, "Please." I stared at the note on the floor, the single word "please" scrawled in uneven handwriting. My heart pounded as I tried to shake off the unease creeping up my spine. Who could have left it? And why? I knocked gently on the locked door. Answer. Just silence. All day, I kept glancing at the door, half expecting it to move or open by itself. I tried distracting myself, explored the nearby woods, made a fire, and ate dinner, but the feeling of being watched wouldn't leave me. That night, I stayed downstairs on the couch, lights on. I kept hearing faint noises, creaks, whispers, something scratching. At around 2 a.m., I heard a soft thud from the hallway, the locked door. I swallowed my fear and slowly got up to look. The door was slightly ajar. Inside the dark room, I could barely make out something moving then. A cold breeze brushed past me. I slammed the door shut and bolted it. My phone had no signal, so I couldn't call anyone. I realized I was completely alone and trapped. Sleep was impossible. Every creak and whisper from that locked room kept me on edge. Around 3 a.m., I heard it clearly, a voice. A soft, desperate whisper coming through the door. "Help me." I pressed my ear against the wood. The voice was weak, trembling. "Please, help me." I pulled back, heart racing. Who or what was trapped behind that door? I searched the cabin for anything useful. A crowbar, a screwdriver, anything to pry the door open. No luck. Suddenly, the lights flickered. For a moment, everything went dark. When the power came back on, the note was gone. But on the floor beneath the door, new scratches had appeared, longer this time, like claws desperately scraping. I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I had to open that door. I grabbed an old rusty crowbar I found in the corner of the cabin. My hands trembled as I approached the locked door. The whispers had grown louder, more urgent. "Bait." With a deep breath, I forced the crowbar under the bolt and pried. The bolt groaned, but eventually gave way. I turned the knobs, surprisingly cold and smooth, and slowly pushed the door open. A rush of cold air hit me, and I almost stumbled back. Inside was pitch black. No floor, no walls, just an empty void. Then, I saw it, a pale hand reaching out from the darkness, fingers trembling. A voice whispered again, "Help me." I tried to reach out, but my hand passed through the darkness like smoke. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. I was trapped. The door slammed shut with a deafening bang, and the world around me dissolved into complete darkness. I couldn't see my own hands in front of me. The air was cold and heavy, and the silence was suffocating. I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" But only my own voice echoed back. Suddenly, whispers surrounded me, hundreds of faint voices, all pleading, crying, begging for help. The voices grew louder, overlapping, as if they were trapped souls desperate to escape. I tried to move, but the floor beneath me felt unstable, like stepping on clouds made of smoke. My limbs felt heavy, sluggish. Then, out of the darkness, a faint glowing figure appeared, a woman with hollow eyes and a sorrowful expression. "Help me," she whispered, reaching toward me. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I realized then I wasn't alone, and whatever this place was, it wasn't meant for the living. The glowing figure drifted closer, her eyes full of sorrow. "My name is Eleanor," she whispered. "I was trapped here long ago. The cabin, it's a prison for souls like mine." She told me about the host, Catherine, a woman who dabbled in dark rituals, trapping spirits to feed her power. Guests who stayed too long disappeared, their souls bound to the cabin forever. Eleanor begged me to find a way out, to break the curse, but the darkness was closing in. "I'm so cold," she said, fading. I knew time was running out. I had to find the key, the only thing that could free us all. I fumbled through the darkness, feeling along the walls, if walls even existed here. The whispers were louder now, like a storm of voices begging for release. Then, my fingers brushed something cold and metallic, a small, rusty key. Gripping it tightly, I turned around to find Eleanor's fading figure. "Use it to unlock the door," she urged. "But beware, Catherine will try to stop you." As I approached the door, shadowy figures began to emerge, twisted shapes with glowing eyes, blocking my path. Fear clenched my chest, but I held the key tightly and pushed forward. The air grew thick, heavy with dread, but I reached the door. The key fit perfectly. I turned it, and the door began to creak open. As the door slowly swung open, a blast of cold air hit me like a wave. The whispers turned into screams, agonized and desperate. Shadowy figures lunged towards me. I slammed the door shut just in time, locking it behind me with the key. Suddenly, I was back in the cabin hallway, the real one. The darkness was gone. The room was quiet, but the air still felt heavy. I collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath. I glanced at the locked door now, just an ordinary wooden door, no longer glowing or pulsing. Outside, the first light of dawn was breaking through the trees, but I knew the nightmare wasn't over. Just as I was gathering my things to leave, I heard footsteps on the porch. The front door creaked open slowly. Catherine stood there, her eyes cold and unreadable. "You shouldn't have come here," she said softly, her voice like ice. I tried to back away, but the hallway seemed to stretch endlessly behind her. She smiled, revealing teeth sharp as knives. "This cabin doesn't let go of its guests that easily." I realized then escaping the darkness inside wasn't enough. Catherine was still here, watching, waiting. Catherine's smile twisted into a sinister grin as she advanced toward me. "Do you think a mere key can undo what I've built here?" she hissed. Desperation fueled me. I grabbed the crowbar I had used earlier and held it steady. "I'm not staying," I said firmly. Her form flickered, dark shadows swirling around her like a cloak. Suddenly, the hallway seemed to collapse into swirling mist. I swung the crowbar, and it passed through her like smoke, but then a scream echoed, piercing and filled with rage. The walls shook violently. I focused on the key in my pocket, clutching it tightly. With one final shout, I plunged the key into the floor. A blinding light exploded, and Catherine screamed as she was pulled into the void. The cabin shook once more, then fell silent. The silence was overwhelming. The heavy atmosphere that had clung to the cabin lifted like a weight off my chest. I stumbled outside, just as dawn broke fully over the horizon. The woods looked peaceful, normal. No more shadows lurking, no whispers haunting the air. I called the local police and reported the strange cabin, but when they arrived, they found nothing unusual. No locked doors, no darkness, no sign of Catherine or any trapped souls. I packed my things and left immediately, never looking back. But sometimes, when the night is silent and still, I swear I hear faint whispers carried on the wind, pleas for help, or maybe warnings. Weeks later, back home, I received a package with no return address. Inside was a small wooden box, intricately carved. On top lay a single note in familiar handwriting. The cabin is never truly free. Beware the next guest. My blood ran cold. I locked the box away, but sometimes, late at night, I feel a chill creeping through the room, like the darkness I escaped is still reaching for me. Some places don't just hold memories, they hold secrets, and some doors should never be opened.